And I believe we should be live. Hello, and welcome to another live stream, another Sunday live stream from For the Love of Comics. It's good to see people already in the chat. Welcome, everyone, whether you're watching this live and will be chatting along or if you're catching up on the recording later. Welcome to another live stream. This one is as always, this one will have a very loose theme that we'll try to explore over the course of what I'm expecting to be not that long, because this is about an unread stack of books. So how long can I possibly talk about things that I haven't read yet? But if it's not about the books, I thought this would be a good opportunity for all of us to discuss either in the chat or in the comments later the way unread books pile up, or if you're one of those people for whom that doesn't happen, try to get an understanding of this strange phenomenon. I'll just say hello to everyone in the chat right now. The Drunken Sailor, good to see you. Karthik, very good to see you. Ashwita is in the chat. I don't know how long she'll last. She's always a very good sport about it, but it is late here in India. So she'll moderate what little moderation there is that's required as long as she can. So hi, Ashwita. Pranab Sharkar is here. Good to see you. The Comic Binge. Hello. Good to see you. The Comic Binge mentioned to me yesterday in a live stream that we were both on over on his channel that I should do more live streams. So here you go. Your wish is my command. I'll talk a little bit more about that live stream, which I would really recommend all of you to check out over on the Comic Binge's channel. We talked about our top 5 Kurt Busiek comics, and I had a really a great time. It was a blast from start to finish. Rewanji, good to see you. We have Ilzerolil. Did I get that right? Here are my glasses. This time I'm not going to be. Yes, I think it's III 0 III. All right, so I think that might be 0. Chat. Oh, is there a desync? Good to know. How much is the desync? Is it a tremendous amount? Like my audio is coming through before my video, or is my video behind? Well, yeah, if you can give me some details, that's great, because I do want to make sure all the technical things are taken care of. The video is correct, the audio is correct, you're getting me on the left and right channels. A slight audio delay. All right, now I want to make sure the audio is coming after. Do you see the hands clapping first, or do you hear the sound first? Professional stuff, this. Yes, the comics will be rolling as soon. Video is behind. Oh, very interesting. I should be able to do something about this. Give me just a second. I was trying to. All right, now I've made a couple of changes. Let's see if this is any better. All right, so the audio was behind video. The hands are clapping and then the audio is coming. All right, now let's see what happens with the second time around. I think I may have overcompensated as usual in trying to set up a little bit of a sync. It's perfect now. Wow. Perfect. I'll take it. Thank you. Great. All right. So I guess that's what it was. I overcompensated because the video is usually behind the audio because it's a heavier stream, I guess. So what I realized from earlier live streams is I have to delay the audio a little. I obviously went too far in the other direction. I've pulled it back a little. So slow clap for me figuring this out on the live stream as we're live. But thank you so much for pointing that out. Thank you everyone for providing that feedback. And if we are good to go, all right, everyone says we're good to go. Ritvik Shorkar, good to see you. Renato, I think I must have missed some people in trying to get this sync up, but hello to everyone. Dries De Wolf, JS De Wolf, I haven't seen you in a while. How are you? Guido van der Zee, good to see you. Is that Suporno? I almost read it as Supremo, an Indian comic superhero. Suporno Shaha is here. Gore Vidal is here. Very good to see you. Thank you. Yes, this I put this lamp up here in an attempt to jazz up the production values of these videos, particularly because I am sort of shooting in the same space, so I wanted a little bit more texture or something like that. So there's different things I'm trying. There were a couple of technical live streams that I didn't publish for later view, in which people helped me put together the way the lights and the microphone, etc., should be working. I'm still playing around with this stuff. It is getting to be summer already here in New Delhi, so it's getting very warm. I've already got the fan on, the ceiling fan. I'm going to have to turn on the air conditioner sooner or later, and that's not good for audio. But I tried last year to sacrifice myself at the altar of audio quality and keep the fan and the air conditioner off while I'm recording. It's not possible. So you'll have to suffer with a little bit of sound stuff, but I'm trying to do what little I've learned to keep that audio not noisy. For the love of comics versus For the Love of Comics. Ritvik Sharka says, loved your discussion about Kurt Busiek yesterday. Thank you. Yes, that was a great collaboration. The Comic Binge invited me over on his channel, and it was just a topic I couldn't resist. And I particularly think it was a funny live stream from my personal point of view, because of the approach that the Comic Binge, and I think a lot of people have, is that I do not read superhero comics at all, which is not true. I do read superhero comics, but I can see why that understanding. But when talking about Kurt Busiek, I think it was surprising for the half dozen of us who were there. I think it was surprising, the discussion on superhero comics and why we love Kurt Busiek. So yeah, glad you enjoyed that live stream. Glad everything is working over here. Thank you very much. I'm very self-conscious about pronouncing Bengali names because I know how it is to have them pronounced in a mishmash of ways. I still get it wrong. And of course, a live stream is the worst case for pronouncing any names, not just Bengali names, but there are so many names in the chat because so many of you are from so many different places that it's extremely embarrassing to be live. At least if I'm recording something, I can look up how something is pronounced or try to look up how something is pronounced. Live, it's crazy. So how hot is it here? Well, I mean, I think it's about 30 degrees centigrade, which is not too bad. But the problem is I close myself in this room because I don't want any sounds coming in from outside. And then I've got lights on, the computer's on, I've got, pieces of machinery and gadgetry. So it just slowly increases the room temperature just in this one area over the course of a couple of hours quite a lot. So however hot it is, it's a couple of degrees hotter in here, which is the nature of the business, I suppose. Having Daniel GW says that it's the opposite issue in Canada. It's frozen over there right now. I know. Whenever I hear about cold snaps and snowstorms in places when we're there should be an exchange program in some ways. We should be able to transfer something. It's just everyone's always jealous of the other. But I know that when people come to India, particularly if they're from a cold climate or from a place where it's cold many more months of the year than it is warm, and even warm may not be that much, they really enjoy the heat. And for me, it's when they're here in April or something and they're like, oh my god, look at this in April. So the grass is always greener on the other side. It doesn't damage the comics. Yeah, the comics are, I think, in general, I found them to be pretty hardy. I think humidity does a lot of damage, and I think direct sunlight does a lot of damage. But it's never so bristlingly dry that the glue will break and fall apart. I've only seen that in very cheap paperbacks from the mid-90s or something like that. Books in general seem to hold up to an ambient heat as long as it's not humid. At least in my limited experience, they seem to hold up to, as long as you don't have moisture, they're pretty hardy. But I did live in places with extreme humidity and the kind of foxing and browning that happened over just the course of 12 months was ridiculous. So that's one of the things is if I can never fantasize about living by the seaside unless I'm fantasizing also about getting rid of all the books. It's a tough choice. Good to see everyone here. All right, so why is this live stream? Let's talk a little bit about that. So I call this the UNREAD stack. This is the to read list. What I have over here are a bunch of books and comics that I have bought, I've picked up over the last couple of months that I have not been able to get to read. And this is for a variety of reasons. Things have been busy, things have been hectic on the work front, on the family front, on the home front. And that's kept me not only from making the kind of detailed videos that I had planned and with all of the doing and redoing and redoing. If you've seen our latest blooper reel, you would have seen how many takes it sometimes gets to get, how many takes it takes to get I think I just realized why it's called a take. Well, live, that too. But I haven't been able to make videos in that detailed manner, and I've actually not been able to get to read. And there are a couple of different reasons for that. But that's also something I wondered if we wanted to talk about not being able to read, but keeping on buying at the same time, or being able to read but buying way more than one can read. And before I go on, I realize that the community that I'm talking to right now may not be as monolithic as I think. I always think that, yes, everyone's in the same boat. Everyone is the same way, but that may not be the case. And that's because we may have different resources at our disposal. I think of a time when I would look at people who had little libraries in their house where they had many, many books, and I would just wonder how that was possible, because even buying one book was so expensive. So I do know that there have been many times in my life where you get one book and you kind of read it and you reread it because that's all you have. Somewhere, for some people, maybe that switches. Maybe there are two curves of what you can afford and what you can read. And maybe the more you can afford, the less time you have to read. I'm sure there's some sort of a connection over there. But should I guess the larger question is, should I be reading more? So the answer for me, at least, is yes, you should be reading more. Now figure out what's preventing you from reading and solve that. But the other question is, should I keep buying books when I haven't read what I already have bought? And that, I think, is a fundamental question for some people. Again, there might be some people who are just like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I mean, I'm lucky when I get to buy one book or two books, and when I read them again and again, and I have to wait until I can afford to get another book for the next paycheck or next month, which is what I mean, is that maybe there's a difference. Maybe there are some of us who buy more than we can read, and then there are some of us who read more than we can buy. And there may be a third who always read what they buy, and they read it either as soon as they get it or very soon after. So they're always on top of their reading. That mythical creature, I'm less certain about whether they exist or not. I'm sure there are people in the other two categories. So first of all, I'd be interested in just knowing how many people fall into which category. Although, of course, I haven't been watching it, and I don't know how to do polls, which might be something I should try. Can I engage with your audience? It says, start a poll, it says. Oh, all I can ask is yes or a no? All right. Well, what should the question be if it's a yes or a no question? This is like a magic spell in D&D. Do you buy? Now, this might be too basic a question. Let me add a qualifier. Instead of do you buy more than you read, do you buy way more than you read? All right. So way more. You can interpret that however you want. Hey, look, my first poll, and it took me less than 45 seconds to figure it out. I don't know if all of you can see the poll. I think it's over there. But I can see there are 43 people in the chat. Excellent. So I would love to see 43 votes, even if you don't feel like commenting, which I love when people comment and exchange their points of views. But even if you don't feel like doing that, do vote in the poll. 87%. I don't know how many. Do I get stats on this? Okay, so there are only 19 votes in. All right, so there are 44 of you watching. There are only 19 people who voted, and it's an overwhelming 86% saying yes, they buy way more than they read. Wow, that's pretty impressive. I'm a collector, so I have a problem buying in general, the Comics Binge says. Sideswipe says, initially when I had less money, I used to read a lot more. Yeah, this is the thing, is that money and comics are expensive, but I think this would be to everything that is consumed in a way. And I know this exists definitely for video gamers, particularly with Steam and bundle sales. And I'm guessing that the same could apply to people who read comics online and who have the ability to buy things on Humble Bundle and things like that, where you can get a mass of things. And I remember back in the day when digital music first became extremely popular and MP3s became the way to not just listen to music, but to exchange music and to disseminate music in legal and not so legal ways. And then everybody had like 200 albums. They had the entire history of rock and roll in some album and box set, etc., etc. Now, were they listening to these songs? Were they listening to that bootleg live version in Japan and comparing it to the original? Or were they just hoarding because the floodgates had somehow opened, that there was a shift from one way of having things? And of course, this doesn't mean that even people who own physical media, whether it was CDs or vinyl, were listening to every single thing they bought. But I'm saying particularly with digital music, I knew people who had more music than they could listen to in a lifetime because they were just downloading, and the fact that they had the ability to just get these things for free. So you can just guess how they were doing it. But it seemed more about the accumulation. It seemed more about the having it and the being able to say you have it. There might have been completionist ideas in there. So all of these things might be the same thing. Shaurya Bhattacharjee says, a very tiny contribution to my favorite channel on you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your super chat. I really do appreciate it. All of these, anything that anyone ever contributes as super chat or super thanks, I put into buying comics that I show on this thing, 100% towards comics. So thank you very much. I also get to see the super chats during live streams. And then there are super thanks. So YouTube started this thing that I didn't even know of, that you can say thanks on a particular video and provide a contribution, a monetary contribution. And one day I just had like $7 from someone, but you don't see who it was, which I think is ridiculous, because with all the other forms, the stickers and the chats and things like that, you can see who the donor is. So I've had a couple of people donate on videos, but I'm so sorry that I don't know who you are, because YouTube just tells me that it's this video and it's this much, $4 on this Tintin Black Island video, but I have no idea who sent that to me. But anyway, thank you so much. I think the poll has got a few more people in the no area. So let's say it's at, say, we've got 42 votes. That's great. So with there are 50 people watching, we've got 42 votes on this. That's a good ratio of that. And I'll say 81%, 11%, 19%, 80-20. That's an interesting, that says something about the demographic. So maybe 80% of us have a little bit more disposable income or have less discipline. So I'm not going to guess at the reasons why, but there's obviously an overwhelming majority of people, in which I count myself, and this is what this live stream is about, who have purchased more than they have read, not just at one particular point of time, but for an extended period of time. So even though I know that I haven't had that much time to read, it's not necessarily a new thing. It is something that I've encountered before, where I've purchased a lot and not read it. Now, as for the reasons why, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and some of these things are not so flattering ideas, and some of them are more like rationalizations and justifications. Oh, thank you so much. I've got another Rory. Thank you so much, Rory. Rory says, I received Tintin in the Noir and Blanc, the black and white, those mini editions that I've made a video on, in the mail today based on my recommendation. I don't understand a word, but it's beautiful. Yes, it is. And you'll understand the words. I mean, if you're familiar with Tintin, and, it'll make sense. Those books are completely readable, and they are gorgeous. I'm so glad you were able to find a copy of that edition. So we've got people who are a bit of both. There are some people who are saying column A and column B. I'm guessing this is about whether we have discipline, whether we have disposable income, whether we have. But my well, there is a collection aspect to things, and I've always wondered what part of, because I always want to think of myself as a reader, and I am an accidental collector is the way that I've always thought about it, that you end up with things because you don't get rid of things, or because you're not just borrowing things from the library. You accumulate things because you were interested in every single component, and after a while all of them put together end up being the collection. But your goal wasn't to have a collection, but the way it goes, and particularly with comics, but I think with many things, you may have a series, you may have multiple volumes, you may have a run, you may have a character. There are so many reasons to buy another volume, for reasons that may have to do with reading. I want to see how the story goes on, but that's a different story. This is a different creator. There could be so many combinations, but because you want that volume 3, because you want that volume 4, completing something, collecting something in its entirety definitely adds to the volume of what you're purchasing. And over there, you may have even more distinctions. You're buying something in a special edition. You're buying something in a collector's edition that puts everything together in a way that you want to have, you want to possess the entire thing. Those are just some of the variety of reasons we could have for having things that we haven't read. Another common thing, and this is one. I'll have another poll, since I managed that first one all right. I know they can only be yes or no. I can't. Oh, I have to close a poll before I start another one. All right. So if you haven't voted yet, this is your last chance to put a vote in. Do you buy way more than you read? At about 47 votes, 48 votes. Yeah, I think if anything, yes is pulling ahead. So we're going to end. I'll say I'll end the poll when we get to 50 votes. That's a good healthy sample size, and that will be that. Well, that's one for everyone who's watching right now, which is fantastic. That's brilliant. And then 82-18. All right, ending the poll at 50 votes. 82% say that they buy more, way more than they read out of 50. Very, very interesting. Gore Vidal says he continues to be on the lookout for a particular, a few Phantom comics from Fru publications, which are hard. And I know a lot of people who, those Fru editions of the Phantom in particular, are extremely popular and sought after in India, which, by the way, has a secret hidden fandom of the Phantom, and I'm part of that because we grew up reading Phantom comics that were published in India, and they were reprints, of course, but we realized they were reprints later. But we read a lot of Phantom in the newspapers and in Indrajal comics, and I think that has sort of created this little subculture of Phantom fans over here. Waiting till a series is finished to start reading it, so that's interesting. That's a good subdivision of one of our categories, where I don't want to start reading it until I have the whole thing. And the whole thing is maybe going to take 5 years because they're going to bring out one volume a year. So I'm going to buy these volumes in the year that they come out because I don't want them to go out of print and I don't want to get to a certain point and not have the rest of it. So I'll buy a volume a year of this particular series. And once it's done, I will sit down and read it now that I have the whole thing. And that makes perfect sense to me. I wonder if we started reading it at volume 1 and then we bought volume 2 and we didn't quite like it. Would we still buy knowing that a volume 3 and a volume 4 is coming out? And maybe we wouldn't if it was just a trade paperback and another. But maybe if now we've put in all this effort to get this library edition of whatever, it's hardcover, I'm going to buy it. And then more reasons come in for those who live in markets where you can resell. They're like, well, I can sell a whole set, I can sell a whole lot much more easily than I can sell a book, or I can make more money, or it retains its value, or it even goes up in value. There are all kinds of financial arguments for that, which I don't know anything about, so I'll defer to the truth of those. But yes, there's all kinds of reasons why. And compounding it over a period of time, and this is the thing, is because the same way one is an accidental collector is I bought 2 books a month when I started a job getting paid and I could afford 2 trade paperbacks. I made a budget in my head and I went through every month reading those 2 TPBs over and over again and then getting 2 more. And then at some point of time, I switched to 3 TPBs, but I was always reading them. But I was getting, say, maybe they were Vertigo TPBs. So I would get a volume of Fables and a volume of Why the Last Man. And then I would really get into Fables or Why the Last Man. And the next month I would buy the next 2 volumes of Fables. But I never did at that point of time starting out, I never thought, well, I'm going to buy the first 5 volumes of Fables or whatever was out there. I wanted to try it out. And this is the way I decided what I'm buying next month. But just in the way that compounds over time, and somewhere down the road, you're like, oh, look, I have all of Fables and I have all of Why the Last Man, and all these trade paperbacks on my shelf now look like a collection. They look like bookstore shelves or library shelves that has a certain appeal, but that wasn't actually the intention, or at least in this example, it wasn't. It was just an accumulative thing. But as Samrat says, the same thing can happen with the unread books, is that I get 3 books a month, I read one of them and I don't read 2. And the next month I get one of them and I don't read 2. Now, if you haven't read the 2 that you hadn't read the month before, and you're not reading these 2, over time, that gap starts increasing. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to mathematically plot this as in any general way. Every single behavior will be different, but there is, I think, this idea that there's a larger capacity. And one of the things that I thought is that does it become easier to buy than to read? Is reading, because I think reading is difficult. I think for those people who love reading and who've read all their lives, they may not think about it that way, but even they can have things in life and environment. But it's tough. You've got to make the time for it. You've got to have the effort. One of the things I've realized is I need new glasses. So anytime I try to read and I put my glasses on and it's not absolutely clear, I might get a little bit more frustrated with the light, if it's late at night or something like that. So there are other things that start interfering with one's ability to read, time and degradation of the optic nerve. But should then, this is the larger question that I think I started this live stream with, what was it, an hour ago? Should then one curtail the purchasing? Then should one step back on the buying? And that's that's kind of the question that I've been thinking about, because it's difficult. And of course we know it's difficult, but what is it for? And this is where I'm going to get to that other poll that I wanted to run. And the question over here is going to be, have you ever said, This is in the context of the books that we buy and we don't read. And you can take this, you can take this as a representative statement. Have you ever said it's for retirement, or when I retire I'll read it, or basically saying that sometime in the future, whatever calls there are upon my time and my attention right now will be lesser, and this is what I will have for myself as a treasure trove, as a wine cellar. I heard that very famous quote or anecdote about someone who was asked, "Have you read all the books on your shelves?" And he said, "No, and I haven't drunk all the wine in my cellar either." You know, which is a very different way of looking at books, which is a different way of saying, why are these on my shelves? They're not on my shelves because I read them. They're on my shelves because I will one day read them. So this poll is going in an interesting direction. No, say 59, 61% of people. We only have 28 votes though. So if we want to get a fair enough representation like we did, we'll need a few more votes. But this seems to be a different direct. Now, I don't know if it's the same 50 people answering this poll who answered the last poll, but we're just going to, we don't have that much statistic rigor for this live stream. We'll just assume that it's the same group of people giving these answers. So 80, what was it? 83% of people said that they buy way more than they read. But right now, almost 70% of people are saying that they've never said it's for later or it's for a different. So that means there is, if I'm reading these two polls correctly, that means that there's a sort of gap between what are we putting them on the shelves for. It's almost involuntary. I don't want them to be for later. I want them to be for now, but it didn't happen now. That seems to be what we're saying over here. Interesting. Short or medium term reading schedules should be the norm. Yeah. And I think a lot of people put reading schedules for themselves. They put a target up for the year. They log and they chart how well they're doing according to that target. It's very much like most things that one can make into an exercise that is good for you. You know, you exercise the muscle and it becomes muscle memory. It becomes a natural thing because you've ritualized it and because you approached it in a targeted way. Absolutely. 70% saying no at about 40 votes. So, all right, that poll is going interesting. Give it another 10 votes, but I don't think anything's making up that gap over here. Let's see some of these other comments. We've got... maybe the audience in this poll is too young to contemplate retirement. That may be. But now I'm really confused is because I thought that the audience of this channel or these live streams may have been people slightly more matured in their approach to life and their experience. Also, I thought that the idea of that disposable income, of being able to spend so much money, because as we said, these are not cheap books. If you can spend that much money to buy this much, that means you've got that disposable income. I mean, I'm assuming that none of us are going into crushing credit card debt to buy books. I really hope that's not the case. But if you've got enough disposable income to outstrip your reading speed, either your reading speed is non-existent because of circumstances or your disposable income is quite comfortable. And so then we're talking about comfortable disposable income, but not able to contemplate retirement. Or maybe that's just a commentary on how possible retirement is in these years and worlds of ours. Youngsters, indeed, Mr. Vidal. Yeah, some of us may believe me, maybe. I think I might have opened up a different Pandora's box by talking about retirement. Let's not get too melancholy about it, only slightly melancholy. Let me just check if my camera, the other camera angle is working. It seems to be working, and I think the exposure of this should be fine. I've left it to auto exposure this time on the ISO. Last live stream I had some problems, but Yeah, it seems to be working all right. And then you got a sneak peek at one of the books I wanted to talk about. Maybe it's time we started talking about some comics. So, in the category of all these unread comics that I have over here, I've got a couple of different categories. And the first category I'm going to start with, which often contributes to something filling up my shelves, which I don't get to, is sales or deals, something that offers a value as different from a different value. This used to be the price, or this is regularly the price, and you get it for this much. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to illuminate on how that works and why that works, but it definitely works. So very often I will find myself in a position where you can either get something for a fraction of the price, and it wasn't necessarily something you were interested in or even aware of, or something that you were extremely interested in, extremely aware of, you can get for a slightly reduced price. So a fraction of the price for something you really wanted, that's a no-brainer. There's no, everyone understands that. But something that I had never heard of is more of a risk at a list price, as in you think about the amount of money. You want some sort of guarantee. Either you want to know the creator, you're familiar with their work and you trust them to a certain extent, or you've heard reviews, you've heard opinions from people whose opinions you trust, communities like the ones we have on YouTube, watching videos, reading blogs, being on Reddit, Discord, etc. There are multiple ways in which we mitigate that absolute risk of knowing absolutely nothing and buying something for a decent piece, for a decent bit of money. But if that amount of money, and we come to our own conclusions about what is worth what, so format and hardcover and pages, etc. Everyone has their own calculus. If that amount of money is severely reduced, then it's worth a risk. It's worth a chance. So whether it's flea markets or used bookstores or sudden glitches on online portals, whatever it is, it does create a little bit of that feeding frenzy type of thing. And this can range. I have seen this in a variety of different ways where people can go absolutely insane. People can be very selective. People can be very measured. I have probably strayed more on the size on the side of losing control rather than being measured. But these days I find myself to be a much more mature person, and even big sales don't mean that I'm just going to pick up things that I don't have any confidence in. And some of that will obviously have to do with knowing a little bit more and knowing that that's probably not going to appeal to you. But there is a balance. I think if you swing the price enough, low enough, anything can be worth a shot. And because we discover things at all odd places and in ways that we never expected, we're always open to that. We're always open to being surprised or discovering something with no prior knowledge of it at all. And the first category of books that I'm going to talk about are slightly in that that category. They're a little different from each other. But the first book, there was a sale on Amazon that a friend of mine pointed out, and a bunch of us went online and shared links with each other if we found something interesting. And there were a number of books at very low prices. And by low prices, I'm talking about $30 books available for $10 and things like that, or even lower in some cases, $20 books available for $5. Now, unfortunately, most of the things that I saw on that tremendous sale are things that I already own. Now, maybe in my past, maybe in my youthful folly, I might have been one of those people who'd still get another copy because I'd say, I'll give it as a present to someone, and my copy is a little worn. I'll just upgrade it with a slightly less worn copy. I would do those things, but I've come to the realization now that no, let someone else find it. Let someone else discover this thing that I love so much. I've become so enlightened that I can let those things go. But it does sometimes, I think, invariably pinch when you think I paid full price for that the week it came out. But it's okay because it was something I loved or it was something I was waiting for and I really wanted it. I wasn't going to, and that's how the publisher and the authors make money. So I've got enough justification. I never really have regrets on something I paid a little bit more and that went on sale. I always have regrets about things I didn't get and then I don't have them. So I never have buyer's regret. As I say, I only have not having buyer's regrets or something like that. But they do sway me less because I am still. Someone was saying Ricky Ray said that sales don't sway me as they used to, but I can't help myself. The subconscious of rewarding yourself, Guido van der Zee is saying, because I also think I can resist them a little better. Sometimes it's easier to resist because I already have those books, I already have those particular or better editions, things like that. And some other times you're like, it's not worth the risk. I'm not going to take a chance on something. Not even take a chance. I know it's not going to be my taste. I'm not going to buy it just because somebody else thinks it's good. I want to rely on my interests. So there was a sale on Amazon. There were a number of books that went on sale, and a number of them I already had. But I did find a whole bunch of Simpsons trades from Bongo Comics for about, I don't know, like $3 each. So I picked up 4 or 5 of those. Those of you who've been watching this channel for a while, you saw that I had discovered the Treehouse of Horror again because of the community, and the Treehouse of Horror omnibus, the first volume that came out in a slipcase. The second one's been solicited, I think. The first one, I made a video on that, and those were great comics with some guest star artists, but they weren't the regular Simpsons series. And people did tell me, actually, the regular Simpsons series is also pretty good. I mean, it's not the same thing as the Treehouse of Horror, but you should check them out. But they've got so many volumes and they've been running for so many years that I really didn't know where to start. And this sale was a good time in which for $3 each, I could pick up a whole bunch of these and see if they are as good as people say, and I could give different issues through different years a try. When I'm going to do that remains to be seen. It's the intellectual exercise of it, perhaps. But a couple of other books, apart from those Simpsons comics, those trades, included this book, The King in Yellow. Now, The King in Yellow is a comic based on a play from the 19th century. I haven't read the play. I've heard its name. It's a renowned work of the weird, as they say. And this is a comics adaptation. And what drew me to this is that it is adapted by Ian J. Culbard. Now, Ian J. Culbard is someone I'd become familiar with through his collaborations with Ian Edgington, the writer, and they worked on a couple of Sherlock Holmes comics that I really enjoyed, and I greatly enjoyed Culbard's style. I believe I've got a couple of other Culbard books, or maybe I'm confusing them with Ian Edgington books illustrated by other people. He isn't the illustrator for the War of the Worlds book that Edgington did. That's Disraeli, I believe, but this is adapted, as in the text of the play is also adapted by Culbard. And I didn't know that he wrote. I've only known him as an artist working with writers. So that is the reason why I picked this up. This was cheap, it was on sale, etc. But this is what, because it is from Self-Made Hero, who I believe have also published a couple of other Ian Edgington books, maybe another Ian Culbard book that I've read, and is a publisher that I really like. Seeing one of their books on sale got me interested. Seeing who had adapted this sort of famous work got me interested. And that's it. That's the reason for picking it up. I think this is not going to be that long of a read, but it is a way. I don't know if I would go and read the 18th century play, but I'm completely fine reading a comics adaptation of it. It's just one of those things is that if I haven't sought it out in the play form, having heard of it before, I'm probably not going to seek it out. And this is a way that I get that story, but I also get an adaptation of that story from a creator I really like, someone whose style I've really liked, and I'm interested in seeing how they work with script. So even though it says Chambers, Kalbad Chambers is the author from centuries ago, it's not a collaborative comic, it's an adaptation by the artist. So I'm looking forward to it, but I know nothing about it. I know nothing about the play other than the weird, and I know nothing about this comic. I'd be interested if others know of this particular book. The King in Yellow Chambers book took on a new life when True Detective became a hit. Oh, The King in Yellow that's probably true. So there you go. It's not even like some sort of a literary reference. I probably have a television reference in my mind. So this might be, I haven't seen when this is published. Well, let's see if this is after True Detective or before. So this edition is 2020. So this is very new relative to us. So this is definitely using the resurgence and popularity of The King in Yellow after True Detective. Interesting. I mean, I don't want to say that's the reason why, but all right, I'm ending this poll, which ends at 74% of people saying they have never said it's for retirement, and the reason I put it within retirement is just it's for another time. It's my wine cellar is what I meant. But 74% said nope, it's supposed to be for right now. I wasn't planning on drinking it later. I was planning on drinking it now, and I haven't gotten to it yet. Let's see, what other comments do we have. We spent thinking about not spending money, spent that time spending money, then it's time well spent. Wow. All right. This is not going to be something I'm going to be able to unpack as the chat scrolls by at full speed. But The King in Yellow, slim book, comics adaptation by an artist I really like. Looking forward to reading it. But now I know more than I did before I started this live stream, which is the whole point. The next book that I wanted to talk about, which I also got on sale, is from Dark Horse, and it's called Drawing Lines. This is an anthology of comics by women cartoonists. Dark Horse has a number of these slim little hardcovers, anthologies along a certain theme. I have their anthology on noir stories, and that features Brubaker and Lapham. So this was something that I was aware of as a format. I did not know this particular volume existed, and I believe there are a couple of others. A friend of mine picked up another volume. I can't remember which one that is, but I'm sure the knowledgeable people in the chat will be able to tell us how many of these volumes Dark Horse has. This one was picked up, perhaps obviously, because of the people that it advertised, featuring stories by Joyce Carol Oates. I didn't know Joyce Carol Oates did comics, but it might be a comic based on the work of Joyce Carol Oates, or maybe she has been collaborating on comics like Margaret Atwood was. Gail Simone, Joelle Jones, Colleen Doran, Jill Thompson, and many more. The many more including, let's see over here. So yes, there's Jill Thompson, China Clugston Flores, Colleen Doran. So some of these are written and drawn by the same person, like Love Triangle by Jill Thompson and Yellow Fever by Colleen Doran. And some of them are collaborations between writer and artists, but the writer and artists are also all women. So this is written by Gail Simone, illustrated by Rebecca Woods, and lettered by Lois Bujales. The Boogeyman by Colleen Coover. Carla Speed McNeil of Finder and Other Comics, hands-on is the piece over there. Lee Mars, I am not familiar with. Hurricane Eye for the Straight Girl. Neither do I. Well, written by Diana Schutz. Diana Schutz, I believe I know Diana Schutz as an editor. Am I getting that wrong? And illustrated by Amanda Connor. Let's see who else we have. We have Joelle Jones. We have Trina Robbins, Ann Timmons. I don't know Violet Kitchen. I do not know Madison Clyle, Leela Corman, Roberta Gregory. So this is like most anthologies, a combination of known names and unknown names to me. I am a big fan of the people who I do know, and looking through this, and because it's an anthology, this is one of those books that is not completely unread, because when I opened it up, the first 2 pages, the first page was a 1-page story, the next page was a 3-page story. So you can imagine, with something this thin and that number of pieces in it, each of the pieces is very short. And I quite like this short flash fiction type of anthology. I like getting a variety of styles, but also that short story, because I think that short story, that one shot, is something that's very interesting when it's not about characters. I mean, I think we're all familiar with, or we are all used to seeing one shots featuring characters we know. And so it's a completely enclosed story in one single issue, but it's about someone who has larger stories. One shots that are absolutely self contained, where they have no reference to any other series and giving you a variety of comic styles, comics artwork. I think have a different charm. And like all anthologies, I'm looking forward to discovering new people. So, for example, here is let me see who this piece over here. The story is by Gail Simone, who I know, but the art is by Rebecca Woods, who I do not know. But Rebecca Woods' art over here looks quite reminiscent of Brian Talbot. So there's a particular kind of hard edged line, plainer, simpler drawing. And I've seen this used by a number of artists in different styles, and, with color and without color. And I quite like it. That it has a strange power somewhere between realism and non-realism, very different from Colleen Coover's style. Colleen Coover, whose Bandette I was talking about recently in another video. Having these right next to each other is just great fun. So a list of authors who make me excited about reading new work by them, and a bunch of new people who I have not heard of, which is the whole point of an anthology. Now, this is also where the risk mitigation comes in. You're mitigating the risk by having some familiar names and some things that that you have a leaning towards liking, but you're also, you're also mitigating it because it's on sale and because the price was right. But given the fact that I enjoyed the noir anthology, now I can feel this kind of collector thing coming in. That how many volumes are there? So the noir one was black cover. This is blue cover. Do they have red and green covers? Things that don't necessarily have to do with reading. So this is how insidiously these things can work. If you enjoy 2 of these volumes, you'll want to get the other 2, I think. Some of us will. You'll want to get the other volume just so that we have the whole set. I know it's true. I'm going to see if I can resist that. A longtime editor for Dark Horse. Exactly. That's what I was thinking. That's where I know her from. I know her as an editor, and I think she wrote the foreword on one of the Usagi Yojimbo gallery editions or artist editions, if I'm remembering correctly. All right. Now, so those 2 are comics that I picked up because of the sale idea, because they were available for a fraction of the price that they usually listed at. And I had the additional attraction of creators that I recognized and that I was familiar with, that I liked, drawing me to them. So those 2 things were powerful. Now, the next category I'm going to talk about in these books is going to be about recommendations from other comics readers. And recommendations can come to us directly, where someone will tell you, you should read this, this is great. Or people can be just praising something and other people are also praising the same thing. And you create a sense that, wow, a lot of people really like this book, or a lot of people really like this story. Of course, we know this from social media and online things that we do on YouTube, again on Reddit, etc. And we can read about this. Now, if we have people that we usually can count on to have a well articulated opinion, even if we disagree with it from time to time, I believe we like their method, we like their approach, and we like them giving their reasons why. So sometimes, many times, I find that to be a powerful mitigator for me when I'm not sure about something, and I'm not sold on the plot summary or the idea that someone has said, or even the way some other people are talking about it. They're gushing about it a bit too much. They're being a little too frantic, or they're being a little too vehement about things. Those things can be deterrents, but if someone you trust tells you it's excellent, then you think twice about it. When two or three people you trust kind of independently say something is excellent, you become a little bit more confident. And this is where the next three books come in, because I have over here The Last Ronin, which is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle story. And I am not very familiar with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm not familiar with the original series beyond the first volume that IDW reprinted. So I read the absolute original black and white issues, because I wanted to know, because many people told me that it started very different. It started much darker than the kind of cartoons and movies ended up depicting them as, and the comics themselves had a variety of avatars. So I wanted to see that original comic book, and I read those in that volume that IDW put out. But other than that, the only Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics stories that I've read are the crossovers with Usagi or Jimbo. So I'm sort of the opposite of many people who tell me that, wow, I only knew Usagi as someone who appears on TMNT. I had no idea Usagi had his own series and universe and lore. And I'm the other way around, where I only know about the TMNT, again, in comics form, because obviously movies and television. So The Last Ronin is something that I heard a lot of people praise, and particularly a lot of people praise for being a return to form of the original stories, and at the same time being an absolutely new story that has a setting that is quite, well, from what I understand, it's kind of like an old man Logan type of story. But that's about all I know. It's about one Last Ronin. So you could say that that's not, I don't have more spoilers than just this one. It doesn't show four turtles, it shows one of them. So I'm guessing it's sad. But I was told this is an excellent standalone story. I was told that anyone can really enjoy this. You don't need to be mired in TMNT history and lore. If you are, it might be rewarding, but you don't need that. So this is something that I'd been thinking about, and so many people put this on their end of year lists as in one of the best reads of the year, one of my favorite reads of the year, that temptation finally got the better of me. I haven't started it yet. I haven't started any of these books yet other than that anthology, but I'm looking forward to it. I like samurai stories. I like the original TMNT, those indie scratchy black and white comics. I really like those early issues. I mean, they had a rawness to them that I think obviously isn't what the toys and the TV show and things like that are about. This one seems interesting because it's removed enough from that, and it's so many years later, but it's also a kind of story that seems equally welcoming of new or unknowing readers as it is of old people. At least that's my impression of it so far. That's what people have told me, and that's why I picked up The Last Ronin. The IDW's ongoing series is very solid, says Comic Binge, and I've heard that from a number of people. I've heard people talk about that new series, but there's just so many volumes of them, and again, it's one of those things that what if I read it and I didn't like it, and then I would have to tell people that I didn't like it, and I don't want to piss people off, and I don't know whether it's my cup of tea. There's just something about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that I'm always like, I don't know if it's my cup of tea, but I do like those original comics many years later. So this seems like if you're not sure, and I'm not sure whether my impression is correct, but The Last Ronin seems like if you're not into the TMNT regular, you can still like this book. And I think that's the big draw of it for me. And of course, in a nice hardcover format, which I got for a reasonable price. This wasn't on sale or anything like that, but I capitulated because of people all around me telling me that it's great. So I said, okay, I'm going to try it. I'm going to read some TMNT. So people are saying that it's good. Is that what it is? Someone has a question. Matthias asks, do you usually sell books to make room for new ones? In theory, I would like to do that. In practice, I don't know how to sell books. Well, first of all, there isn't really the ability over here to sell as easily as I think a lot of people who have access to eBay and other things. Like in the US and the UK, it just seems, in Europe, it seems easier to sell books. And I'm very lazy and I don't want to haggle with people, and I don't want to deal with people on like Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups, and then I don't want to go to the post office and mail stuff, which I have real logistical issues with. So I don't sell books because I don't like interacting with people when it comes to transactions and buying and things like that. Maybe one day I will. What I'd like to do is to definitely keep culling my collection. So I often trade books with people. I've read this, I'm not going to read it again. You've got something you've read, you're not going to read again. I like that idea. I like that idea of trade. And then I have sold a couple of books to friends and people I trust, and not to not to create a headache for me. Guido van der Zee had an interesting comment that he's watching the stream to see if there's something that will catch his attention that he can go out and hunt and buy. And I know what you mean. I feel that way sometimes. Is that, am I going to watch a YouTube video or read a review just so that I can see that, yes, that's something I would like to own. They own it, I own it, it looks good. And sometimes I wonder if I contribute to that by putting things on camera and saying, oh, look at this, and look at the hardcover, and look at the ribbon, it's so shiny, look at the impression. These are tough questions. Let's keep wrestling with them, because talking about deluxe hardcovers, etc., this is Once in Future by Dan Mora and Kieran Gillen. Now, Once in Future is one of those series that I heard a lot about last year, and I think the year before. When it started coming out, people were raving about it. As it was continuing, people were raving about it. I don't know anything about it. I am a little familiar with Kieran Gillen because I've read The Wicked and the Divine, which I really liked, and Dan Mora. I've seen Dan Mora's art in Buffy the Vampire Slayer comics, I believe. So there might be other comics, but I'm not a big superhero so I'm not familiar with those. I haven't read Die, which is another series that I think Kieran Gillen had that was quite famous. But Once in Future got a lot of people talking, and this hardcover slipcased edition was something that showed up at a decent price. Once again, not on huge sale. It's not like I made a huge savings or anything like that. But somewhere, I think I had the feeling that this was hard to get. Maybe. I don't know if that's true. And somewhere, my buying of this book, I have to admit, had something to do with it, where I'm just like, well, that looks like it's less than list price, but I thought this was out of print or it's difficult to find. Maybe I should grab it. Maybe it's a treasure. And that's a ridiculous kind of behavior. I don't know why I would do that. I mean, yes, if I say that this is something that I've been interested in and this is something I wanted to take a look at, I would understand that. And it is definitely a handsome package, but I do admit that somewhere I feel, what is this? Why are you getting seduced by the hardcover slipcased edition of a thing that you don't even know if you like or not? And that really is something that I'd like to get people's inputs into why that is. Now, I will say that the praise for Once in Future has been very positive, and it has come from people who I think are intelligent, good, smart readers. So I'm not that worried about not liking it, because even if I don't like it, if it's a slipcase edition, maybe I'll be able to sell it. Maybe I'll be able to get rid of it, even though I just said that I don't sell things. So these are the contradictions, I think, that abound with things like this. But once I got this book, I will say that it's a very well made hardcover. The production quality of it, the cover, the embossing, the design, all of it looks beautiful. The only thing that I think I know about Once and Future, and obviously from the title being a reference to the Once and Future King, I think it's got something to do with Arthurian legend, but it isn't set in Arthurian times. So that is probably the other factor, is I do like myself some Arthurian legend stories. Now, I don't know how, you know, respectful of Thomas Mallory this text is going to be or anything like that. It looks like a modern day comic book. It looks very polished. It looks very sleek. I don't want to go too far into it and give myself some spoilers. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm more intrigued by the writer artist combination and the Arthurian legend thing. That is more of its appeal, but I would be lying if I said that, you know, oh, I got the slipcase box set, didn't have something to do with it, honestly. And that same thing applies for the next book on my list as well. So here are the 3 books. And actually, even The Last Ronin being, you know, this deluxe hardcover, but maybe that's the only edition it's available in. I don't know if The Last Ronin also it has a paperback edition, or if that's just an OGN and that's the only format of it. I'll check the comments to see if that's the case. Greg says Dan Mora is one of my favorite recent finds, his World's Finest Run. Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I remember him from Buffy, and I think I really did like his work there. So good to know that combination is there. Yes, so the packaging, the Comic Binge says, of that hardcover is very good. And so I also have over here Something is Killing the Children, which I put with Once and Future as, like, I heard about these series. Did they come out at the same time, or were they? I'm sure that they were out in singles at the same time. So Something is Killing the Children and Once and Future are both series that I heard a lot about. The trade paperbacks either were available in India, but at very high prices, like at something like $25 for each trade, no discounts coming through. And I don't know why, but also I'm not sure if I like the series, so on and so forth. This is obviously a horror series because something is killing the children, and that's pretty horrific. And the cover inside the I knew that would happen, has this figure, this mask, this sort of maniacal thing. I'm not sure what this says about the story. Again, there's embossing on the cover. There's a very nice design. The box set has this foil, red fangs, and that's it. That's all there is to it. So once again, very nice, handsome production. I don't know if the story is good. I know people I trust and people I've listened to said this was a great series and they were really enjoying it. And in particular, James Tynion IV had a big splash with this and a number of other books, because I remember in the Eisner's game, he won Best Writer of the Year for a number of his works, including Something is Killing the Children. So Eisner winning writing, that's another thing that's there for it. And now once it's out in this nice deluxe hardcover slipcase edition, again, at a price that was just a little under list price, and that was good enough for me to say, well, if I'm going to read something, I'm going to give it the best shot it has. And so this kind of production gives it the best shot of me enjoying something. But maybe that's just an excuse for me to buy another hardcover in another slipcase. This is the kind of stuff that I want to get to the bottom of. What happens if I don't like Something is Killing the Children? What happens if I don't like Once in Future. Then I've got these box sets and slipcases for a series that a lot of other people praise and love, and might even be, oh, that's a nice, valuable box set to have, or whatever a value works. And are those enough reasons to have books on your shelves? Are those good enough reasons to own those things? I've always thought that the box set and the deluxe edition, and this is something we were talking about in an earlier live stream as well, I've always thought those are for the fans. Those are for the people who really loved it when it was a monthly and they want a lovely deluxe edition of it. But that's not true necessarily. A lot of people buy these series for the first time or read the series for the first time in their slipcase box editions and things like that. And I'm a good example of that right here with these two, if not others, where I'm going to read these series for the first time in this format. And the reason I remember this is because many years ago, and I'm probably going to alienate a number of people on this live stream now, many years ago, I was told that The Court of Owls is a fantastic Batman story. It's the best Batman story in years. It's really what Batman is all about, and blah, 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 etc., etc. And it had quite a lot of hype. And I was like, well, I don't want to read another Batman story. He's like, no, this will be something you'll really enjoy. This is not like your in continuity things, and you just read The Court of Owls, and that's what I was told. And I was like, well, how many volumes are there? And I think someone said there are 2 trade paperbacks or 3 trade paperbacks you need to get. And I never got around to it. And then one day on Amazon in India, the Absolute edition was on sale, and it was on a healthy sale. It was a good sale. I don't know if it was 50%, but it was on sale, and it was a steal. And this whole thing worked in my head that, well, it's something people have praised. It's something you would have to buy 3 trades for, and they're all collected in this Absolute. And it's an Absolute. It's hardcover. It's slipcased. It's glossy paper. Its production is very good. This is the best chance you have to appreciating this comic. And so I went through that entire process and I bought it, and I didn't enjoy it. I'm not going to get into whether it's a good story or not. I didn't enjoy it, but my point isn't about the story. My point is, well, now I have this Absolute edition that I bought. The first time I ever bought The Court of Owls, the first time I ever read The Court of Owls was in its Absolute edition. And that's okay, because I thought I was giving it the best shot. And I even had some mathematics, in which I totaled up the prices of the trades and how much more is the discounted one, and it's only this percentage more. So I had great justification on an economic and financial way. And I think I can still have great justification, because if someone comes to my house and go, oh, Court of Owls, very nice, and that too in the Absolute edition. But I feel a bit like a cheat, or I feel a bit like a poseur. It's like, I don't like it. Why should I have it on my shelves just because it's a fancy edition? That's a question I have. So I'll sell my copy of it, Maybe it's gone up in price. Maybe the Absolute edition is now worth 4 times what it was worth before. But that's what I always think of, and I have to admit that that's what also crossed my mind when I was buying Once in Future and Something is Killing the Children in these editions. I got them brand new. They were in shrink wrap, perfect condition, from someone who was selling them new. And I did wonder when I was coming back home with them, like, is this going to be another Court of Owls situation? Is it going to be that you got this because of their reputation and what other people think, and you don't enjoy it, and now you've got these fancy volumes? I don't know. Maybe I should have just bought them in trades. I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you think should be the approach over here? I'm not saying there's a right and wrong. It's just me trying to think aloud around these kind of things. Let me just scroll through the comments. Don't know about something, but Once in Future is one of the best action-adventure indie series of the last couple of years. See, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It's like when you say things like that, of course I'm going to check it out, because it's of course it's hyperbole to a certain extent, but when one person says it, it could just, well, first of all, that's good articulation, and it's got a good combination of words that sells me on it. But if enough people say that, then that means your chances of going wrong, or let's put it positively, your chances of enjoying something are higher if a lot of other people whose taste and articulation you trust. I think that's an important caveat. I'm not trying to say just because something is popular, it's going to be good, or good always equals popular. I think some people will say that's the absolute opposite. But I'm not getting into the question of what makes something good. I'm getting into the question of what makes me buy something, and especially what makes me buy something at a relatively expensive fancy edition that is usually meant for collectors and fans. And if I'm not a fan, am I a collector who just wants to have box sets, who just wants to have slipcases, who just wants to have hardcovers, irrespective of whether I enjoy the work or not, or irrespective of whether I've read the work or not? And that might be another reason why something sits on your shelves and isn't read. Is like, until you read it, it could be good or bad. And once you do read it, then you will know. So it's full of possibility when it is unread. It is just the universe of like it being the greatest thing you've ever read. That possibility exists until you read it. So maybe once you spend a lot of money on an absolute edition or a box set and put it on your shelves, you don't want to know that it was a waste of your money and you didn't enjoy it. I don't know. And maybe this doesn't ring true for many of you. Maybe you're like, I'll buy it, and if I didn't like it, I'll sell it. What's the big deal? And sometimes I can flip it for a couple of bucks extra. And that's great. That sounds fantastic. But because I don't live in that environment, and because that's not part of my approach, I have to then question what justification do I have? You're great. You have fine justification there. You've got an ability to, cull your goods and even make a profit. I don't. So what am I doing is I think the larger question. Let's see what the comments are saying. Guido Vandersee says, I always feel that those oversized slipcase omnibus absolutes pretty much an American thing. Are they? We'll see. Let's take a look. But yes, the omnibus maybe I think is an American thing, the big fat omnibus. I think a certain size and a box set and things being in hardcover and things being curated together as a collection, whether it is a Disney Masters or Karl Barks, etc. I've seen this across a number of, you could say that yes, in manga, the tankobon is a much more disposable format. You don't really go for the deluxe thing. So there'll definitely, I think, be some cultural differences and some market differences, the way things are consumed, who the consumers are, what the demographic is, what the disposable income is, how many comics do you read. I think all of these things are variables, and they've been variables not just geographically, they've also been variables over time. We know how comic books, the single issues, were treated, how they were read as, pulp, things that you read once and then just threw away. So that is no longer the case, but the readership was in the, millions, if not tens of millions, and the readership is more. So I think there are a lot of other questions about how much of this is marketing and packaging. But of course, the marketing and packaging is for a particular customer. Who's that customer? That customer is me, I guess, in some ways. So what am I don't know. That's the larger question. What am I participating in? What am I encouraging? Or what is being encouraged within me? Off My Shelf says, if he did a video of his to-read pile, I think it would be 3 days long. I know what you mean. And I think that's the question that I'm getting to, is it the wine cellar? Is it the thing that's stored for later? Or is it just a accumulation impulse? Or is it the best of intentions that ends up having another thing? I don't know. Once I read Once in Future, and once I read Something is Killing the Children in their slipcase box sets or what, in these, then I'll be like, no, you know what? It ended up being okay. I bought it, I read it. But as long as they sit there, I think there'll be some sort of a guilt associated with these in particular, which would be different in some other cases. Rosin Toslov, good to see you. The problem with these editions of My Shelves is saying for Something is Killing the Children and Once in Future is that the slipcase edition is identical to the deluxe HCs, with just the slipcase being the only difference. Okay. Yeah. Well, I didn't know that. I thought the deluxe HC and is the slipcased HC. So I didn't know that there are two different variations of it. But I just mean this edition as opposed to the trades. as something that someone who hasn't read it before would choose to jump into. I think maybe I should have done more investigation into how much the deluxe HCs cost. I just assumed there was just one of them. Larasa, good to see you. Welcome. Daniel says that lately I found myself buying pretty much only TPBs, except for those sweet, sweet Hellboy library. Yeah, everyone's got some exception, but I like TPBs. I was thinking about this the other day. Is that I probably read more TPBs faster and got more reading done, because that period of time I'm talking about, of when I started work and got 1 or 2 books a month, it was all TPBs. I mean, the HCs and whatever, the double dips and the triple dips, they come with that luxury of that. Well, I'm not doing anything else, I might as well get another book. I don't know. So, but these are not the only reasons why one buys books, because, as I said, these are encouraged, and what people encourage you to get takes on these shapes. So we talked about The Last Ronin and Something is Killing the Children Once in Future, which are humongously popular, tremendously talked about on a number of people's end of year lists, Eisner nominations, Eisner wins, so on and so forth. And so therefore there is that reputation. Then there is the reputation of the people, and the way that they're talking about things. And this is why I'm glad to see off my shelves over here, because the next book over here is Onward Towards Our Noble Deaths by Shigeru Mizuki. And this book I found because of his video. I've heard Mizuki's name, but this edition from Drawn and Quarterly, it wasn't on my radar. I hadn't heard of it at all. I know that Drawn and Quarterly often publishes Japanese comics, and they don't really last for very long, but they do tend to reprint. And the fact that they have been bringing out these editions and reprints means that this particular book, one that I did not know that they had done, was brought to my attention. And this is not one of those huge popular things, but I wouldn't have known about it. And as soon as someone mentions it, and that's where you go, you watch the video, you listen to them talk about it, you're like, that sounds interesting, that looks interesting, that's great. I had no idea about it before I clicked on this video or on this Reddit thread or on this Discord community. I had no idea. And 15 minutes later or 10 minutes later, I'm placing an order on Amazon. So I'm not going to talk about this book because I haven't read it yet, but I would recommend you check out Off My Shelves' video on this. This cover has, it's a cut cover. So this little orange stripe over here is not part of the cover. It's a shorter cover than the inside thing. I'm trying to remember if I've seen anything like that before. I hope it's not a manufacturing defect. It looks definitely designed, but to be read in obviously the traditional Japanese format with the spine on the right. Rick Ray says, I need to read the Showa series. Yes, now that I know that the Showa series has been reprinted, because that was one of those things, is that I think volume 3 was available, volume 1 and 2 were not. And I wasn't getting that because I wanted to get all 3 books, and I was probably going to wait for it to come on eBay or something like that. Try to find a lot, but I know that those books have now been reprinted, and immediately after this, next paycheck. But should I jump for the Showa books before I've read this book? That's the question. Should I? I mean, do I just want all of Shigeru Mizuki on my shelves before I've read anything? That's the question that I wouldn't say struggle with. That's the question I like to wrestle with, for exercise. So I'm trying to see if I've missed any. Daniel says this is a great book. That's great to get another recommendation. Also on a live stream a couple of weeks ago. Sorry. Off My Shelf says, yes, you do want all of them. Yes, I know. I'm trying to figure out what the approach needs to be. Here on my list, on this list of books, I'm almost done. I only have 3 books left. On these 3 books, one is an interesting outlier. The only one in all of these books that I have read before, and it's a double dip. But I'll get to that in just a second, because before that, I want to talk about this book, Sunburn, written by Andy Watson and drawn by Simon Gain, that I found out about because of the Comic Manifesto, who was on a live stream with Comic Crack and myself over at Comic Crack's channel. And we were talking about Andy Watson. I had talked about the book tour in my most memorable reads of the year. And I was talking about how much I loved that book, but also how much I'd enjoyed the couple of Andy Watson stories that I'd read before the book tour. Many years ago, I'd read Paris, in which he had collaborated with Simon Gain, and I had read Little Star, which was written and drawn both by Andy Watson, just like the book tour. He's the writer and artist of the book tour, and writer and artist of and Paris of Little Star, and he is the writer collaborating with the artist Simon Gain in Paris. So we were talking about that, and he mentioned Sunburn, brought out by Image Comics. Yes, so Image Comics had brought out Sunburn, which is from that same combination of Andy Watson and Simon Gain, who did Paris. So here is a beautiful looking comic. I mean, as soon as I saw the comic, as soon as it was being talked about, I knew I had to get it, because I was such a fan of their earlier work, and I love Simon Gain's artwork so much. And then this had that additional Santorini color style set in Greece. This book, I go on a live stream, we're chatting. As the live stream ends, I'm buying it. And then when I went to buy it, I found out that Paris has actually been reprinted by Image Comics. I'm guessing because they brought out Sunburn. And Paris is reprinted in a larger sized hardcover. Now, this is my double dip, because I love Paris. I don't know why I just try to get away with it. This is not my double dip. This is a triple dip, because I do have the single issues of Paris. When I first read Paris, I read it as a small paperback, and I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic story. And I've talked about Paris on a couple of different occasions now. But then I realized that it had originally been published not by Self-Made Hero, I think by Slave Labor Graphics. Could be one of those two, but it had originally been published in the full-size comic book format, the single issues. So the smaller paperback that I read had actually shrunk the art a little, and I loved the art so much that I sought out those single issues, which I found for like $1 a piece online, and I got them in that to have that larger format, because I love this story so much. So when I go to find Sunburn, I find Paris in hardcover, and I have to get it because, as I said, I love this book. Now, this is not in color. This has a grayscale approach. And this paper, I definitely want to take a look side by side with the other editions I have, because I don't remember this feeling, this yellow, this parchment-like quality. Maybe I'm misremembering it, but I've pretty much remembered it on white paper. And this choice is, I think it's an inspired choice, given the 1920s Bohemian Paris setting of this romantic story. This seems to work just incredibly, incredibly well. So here is the triple dip, a comic that I have read before that I really enjoyed, being brought out in a lovely, lovely hardcover from Image Comics, and another book by the same writer and artist team that I'd never heard of, that also looks lovely, that I'm already sold on because of the writer and artist involved. And so thank you for bringing these to my notice, Comic Manifesto. Of course, these are just a couple of off my shelves' recommendation, and the Comic Manifesto's recommendation of Sunburn. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I've made a video called it was a live stream, actually, Comics You Asked Me to Read, which was all about what people had recommended and suggested to me. And I did that sort of as a karmic repayment, where people are always saying, well, you've cost me a lot of money. And I'm like, well, you've cost me a lot of money too. So that's where I put in all of those comics. And I definitely could make a video I have actually thought about a video that I will make on all of the comics. Okay, if not all of the comics, many of the comics that I bought because of comics YouTubers, some of whom might be in the chat right now. So let's see if I get that video made. I have a couple of ideas, but that's going to be one of those long videos of how much. I won't try to total up the money. I'll just try to show you the books that I get because of people who make YouTube videos on them and do a really good job pushing them onto me. I will, however, hope to be saying in that video that I've read all of these things. So once I make that list, if I find some of these unread books to be part of that list, I'm going to take care of that first, because that would just be shameful for me to get, oh, and I bought this because of you and I haven't read it yet, and I bought this because of you and I haven't read it yet. All right, and on to our final book for the evening. I'm doing pretty well on time. I think I expected this to be a very short live stream, but then we did spend a lot of time just as usual. But we've got one more. The D&Q Suge releases are golden too. I've got to look into all of these because I know that I picked up a couple of books and then I was missing a couple of books. Especially the ones that Adrian Tomina had edited and put together. So I want to make sure that I have all the ones that have been reprinted, or I am able to pick up the ones that have been reprinted. Yeah, Paris. If you haven't read it, it's a sweet little love story that is just beautifully done. It's well written and it is gorgeously drawn, and it has a real sense of character and time and place that I really enjoyed. All right, the last thing on the last work on my list is something you would have seen in the thumbnail. This is The Voyages of Lone Sloan. Well, Lone Sloan, the Droulet Library Slipcase Edition. Now, I have a funny story. Well, I don't know if it's funny, but I have a story about Droulet. And this is the first Droulet. I've never read any Droulet. I think maybe somewhere in some heavy metal, maybe I've read a short story or a short piece, but I don't have any books. And I've never been able to get my hands on any books. So the idea of a library of all of his works being put out, starting with Lone Sloan, probably the most famous and talked about of his characters or series, how you want to look at it. This has been something that I've wanted to read for a long time and been unable to get my hands on just because there were no editions at a reasonable price. So when I heard that they being Titan books, sorry, I'm going to switch. Sorry, this one is a little large for either this camera or that camera. But when I heard that Titan were putting together a graphic novel collection and putting out essentially all of Droulet's works collected in multiple volumes, I finally, this is the way this is the way I get to read. Who has been told, I've been told, who is a master of science fiction, a master of European comics or comics in general, a visionary. The way that people talk about Mobius, the way that people talk about, honestly, that's the way it seemed to me that people talk about Droulet. There have been a number of commenters recommending me works that I've not been able to get my hands on. Either they don't exist in English translations, or even if they do, they're out of print, not available here unless you're paying these huge charges, which are just not a particular price that someone is asking for, but all the shipping and import and duties attached to that as well. So they're never a feasible buy. This, on the other hand, I was like, okay, so it's going to be an omnibus, but it's going to be, the large format size, and it's going to be hardcover, and it'll give me the entire library if I buy these. And if I find the work not to be to my taste, I won't buy the second or third volumes. What I didn't know, and this is, I knew this would collect 3 books in the first volume, and then there'll be another volume and there'll be more books collected in there. I knew that this would collect 3 books. What I didn't know is that they would be separate hardcovers in the slipcase. I thought it was an omnibus of 3 books just sort of put together. So the fact that it is 3 slim hardcovers, I love slim hardcovers. The fact that it is 3 slim hardcovers and you get these as the independent adventures, as the independent stories of this character was icing on the cake. I was like, okay, I am now sold. So over here, I think you've got a perfect culmination of something that I'm not at all guilty about, because this is something that this is the thing that I've been waiting to buy. Now, this is a library edition. This is the first volume of a library edition. So like the Hellboys, like the other things that we've talked about, this is the start of something. And you're going to end up with 2 or 3 of these, and you're going to be a completionist. And you're going to look at your shelves and say, how beautiful this site. And other people are going to come and look at your shelves and say, how beautiful this site. So all of these things are definitely, part of the appeal of something like this. But at the same time, this is exactly the kind of format that I really enjoy in comics, like large, hardcover, slim, easy to read, easy to hold, but of a particular size, especially knowing what is most famous is the art style and the compositions of this. Now, I said I have a sort of funny story. Let me just hold on. So these, yeah, I knew they wouldn't fit over here, but I haven't wanted to. Well, no, Delirious isn't the first one. I did take the first volume out. I did flip through the first couple of pages, and I'm going to try to replicate that for you in case you're familiar. Right, so it starts with the 6 Voyages of Lone Sloan, and then Gale and Delirious are subsequent volumes. Do correct me in the comments or the chat if I'm wrong about that. But the first book, The 6 Voyages of Lone Sloan, the famous start of the Lone Sloan saga. No gutter loss? All right, let's take a look at the gutter loss. No, I think that's pretty good. I can see the white between them. Is there a double page spread we can take a look at? But I'm guessing that white margin will be there. But no, it's not a white margin. It is the gutter. But I wouldn't call that, Sleepy Reader, what do you think? I wouldn't call that gutter loss over here. I mean, if you let it go, but it looks beautiful. And the colors look fantastic. And it's, I'm so happy to have this. One thing that I did want to say though, wow. I mean, this is why there is that reputation. Now, I will say that sometimes these worry me, and I'll be perfectly honest over here. Sometimes they worry me because I can see things that are incredible, intricate pieces of art, and I can see writing that is ambitious and way out there, for lack of a better phrase. And sometimes it doesn't appeal to me, even though I want it to. Sometimes it doesn't connect with me at an emotional level, where something is very cerebral. I had a little bit of that problem with Dinkal, which I talked about, where I thought the art was doing such marvelous storytelling and the writing seemed to be interfering with the art's storytelling, or it seemed to be taking me out of it. And this is, of course, just my own reaction. But I've often read works, European and American, that were epic in a way that was almost inaccessible to me emotionally. So I will say that there's that worry, and especially when I see something like this, where you've got this kind of intricacy and this detail. I mean, even with lettering and layouts and just the words whipping around machinery and a castle, incredible operatic science fiction that is, at this point of time, legendary status. So it's almost as if excuse me, if you didn't love it, there might be something wrong with you, is one approach that people could have. If it didn't appeal to you, maybe you just didn't get it. Maybe you just didn't understand all the references and all the textual narrative trickery and elegance, etc. These are all things I've heard. I'm concerned about something like this because of its reputation, because of the worship that it elicits from people, and therefore the sort of dismissal of people who don't share in that worship. But everything about this looks to me absolutely gorgeous from the visual aspect of it. And I've now read many books, like we were talking about Little Nemo, where I can just even not read the words if the art does the kind of storytelling, if the layout and the panels do the kind of storytelling that I think comics are so good at. And if they do it in the way that this has the reputation of it, I'm sure I'm in for a good time. But I did want to say that one of the reasons why, even when I got this box set, the reasons why I was afraid to talk about it once I've read it, is because of that kind of fervor, that following, and the way that I have encountered it is perhaps a little unusual. So some months ago, a friend of mine was asking me if I'd ever received racist comments on my YouTube channel, if I'd received hate or abuse, and what do I do about it? And have I blocked people? And have I banned people? Have I reported people? So they were really talking about how I work as far as people are concerned, banning and blocking and things like that. Now, of course, there's been spam and, all the bots, etc. So that's one thing. But he was talking specifically about hate and racist comments. And I told him that, yeah, I actually have a small handful of what I would consider racist comments. I would say 4 racist comments. 4 racist comments in over 5 years, where I have literally tens of thousands of comments. I think that's a pretty good ratio. I think that's very, very, it's fantastic. And some of those comments are hilarious and they're very funny. At one point of time, I thought I would, screenshot them and have a special video in which I react to those. But, I'm not a YouTuber in that sense, so I couldn't quite do that. And I didn't want to give them the oxygen and the air, but they're funny things. People say funny things. But when I was thinking about this list of people that I have banned, this list of 4 or 5 people that I have blocked and deleted, not only their comment, but it's my space, I don't want this over here kind of thing, no matter what you want to say. But freedom of expression, it's like, it's my space. So I've regulated it that way. I thought about one other comment that I deleted and banned. And that comment was not a racist comment. That comment was abusive. I felt it was abusive, and probably in my younger YouTube days where my skin was much thinner, so immediately I must have had a reaction to it. But it was quite nasty, and it was on my top 10 science fiction comics video. Maybe you can tell where I'm going with this. They essentially lashed out at me for paragraphs on how stupid every single selection on my list was, which is funny enough. But the language they used was quite degrading. And while not racist, it was, making statements about mental well-being and, rude words to suggest that I may be developmentally challenged, or only people who have had particular kinds of trauma in their lives would select something like this instead of that. And a big part of this invective-ridden comment was, how can I not have any Droulet on this list? And the fact that they made that point a couple of times, and what they called me because I'd never read any Droulet, and which was my point of view. It's like, I may have put them on the list if I'd read them, but our lists are about what people have read, etc. So I wasn't quite getting it. But he was so mad, he was so angry, and he was so poisonous that because he had the thing like, oh, he also had some colossal misreadings of Nausicaa and things like that. But the funny thing was that unlike general hate or unlike general nasty stuff, this is a person who apparently loves comics. This is a person who apparently knows a lot about comics, but it also felt they felt they needed to unburden themselves of this opinion of me because I hadn't read, or I wouldn't put someone that they loved on a list of top 10 science fiction. What? I think that video had 300 views at that point of time. So I was very confused about it, but I will say that it did create that kind of connection in my head. Does this fandom also exist out there? Is this the level of worship out there that if you come up and you say, I didn't like it, heaven, what would happen if you said you didn't like it? I just didn't put any Drille on my list, and I got that paragraph, those paragraphs full of poison. So somewhere I think it creates this impression of there are some people who take certain things very, very seriously, and they take these things very seriously because these things mean a lot to them. And art does mean a lot to people, and it does affect people. But when it affects them to that level, when it becomes, you are obviously, this person was not a child, so you are obviously an adult who has spent a lot of their time reading comics, and you have enlightened yourself to such intelligence levels that all of the world to you looks like ignorant ants. But the fact that you would turn upon somebody with that vehemence because of your love for somebody, it's so unfortunate that by association with, this individual entered into my thinking about Drille, where, oh my God, Drule has fans like this. This is what's going to. So it's one of those bizarre things. I don't know if anyone's ever had an experience like this, but you have that with television, I think, or you like fans of a particular thing make you a little wary, and you're like, well, I like this thing enough, but I'm not sure about the fans. I'm not saying that's the case, obviously, in the case of Drule or of Mobius or of Bilal or of so many of the other people that people will hail as masters. So it's a little scary to say that, okay, now I'm going to get into a master's box set of reading these reputational things, these things that have created this incredible reputation in history, that have been incredibly influential, that have people talked about. But do they become at some point of time such gods that anything that is not outright worship is dismissed at that level? I would find that an interesting topic, but hopefully none of that will interfere with my enjoyment of the Lone Sloan box set, one slim little hardcover volume at a time. I'm sure that I'll be able to put that out of my head when I'm getting into these stories, but it's just, it's an interesting thing that's out there. But Gore Vidal says, I've seen such comments in Spanish language YouTube channels that discuss books. I remember commenting about Cortázar and mentioning the Latin American writers. Just mentioning them upset some. Yeah. So mentioning some people upset some people. Okay, I get it. Not mentioning some people on your list of top 10. So the idea is that some things are supposed to be so universal that not acknowledging them makes you somehow a reduced intelligence human being. I guess that's the word. Luckily, as I was saying, over 20,000, I don't know, maybe 30,000 comments on this channel, 4 or 5 nasty ones. I think that's an incredible record. I think, and I hear this from people all the time, and I'll say this as my final good night remark, because it's approaching 1 o'clock, that everyone tells me that, man, you have amazing people commenting on your channel. I've heard from people who have much bigger channels and many more comments, and they say all of our comments are just like either positive or negative. That's great, keep it up, that's it. But on your channel, people discuss things, they comment about things, they share anecdotes, they share stories, and they're so funny and they're so articulate, and they make puns, and they respond and they talk at length. And I've always felt that way. I've always felt that I've been really lucky to like find these people who are like interested in talking intelligently and sharing. And these reputations that YouTube channels or comment sections have, I've never found them to be the case. Even with these 4 or 5 examples that I can talk about, that is nothing statistically. It's nothing. The fact that that doesn't happen all the time, etc., just shows me that maybe YouTube's a big place, but it's not as bad as people make it out to be. Yeah, and I make videos on comics. A lot of us make videos on comics, and I don't think we encounter that toxicity and that nature of that poison in the way that people say. And quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. What I find is a high level of articulation, a high level of diction and exchange of ideas, openness, and being like, I didn't enjoy it, and I enjoyed it for this reason. Yeah, but I didn't. And people are civil. People can exchange their ideas and not get nasty 99.99999% of the time, which I think is fantastic, which I think is brilliant. It makes it all worthwhile. It makes it all so great. So if that's the theme, like the theme is all these books that I haven't read, yeah, because other people have read them. And I really respect and love other people's opinions when they're put forward with such passion and with such clarity and with such singular views that it's okay. I mean, I will maybe one day get to reading them, maybe I won't, but even the act of buying them, maybe not the absolute edition hardcover, blah, blah, but even the act of buying them is, I think, a sort of acknowledgement of the people who exchange these opinions with us. You know, the enthusiasm that I feel for something is never stronger than when I say, you have to read this, or I put something in someone's hand, whether it's physically or, metaphorically, is that you have to check this out. Getting someone else to pick up that thing that you really love is so much a part of this. So let's take it at that then. I have all of these books thanks to all of you and people like you and channels and people who write and people who blog and people who share their opinions with me on chat and comments and things like that. And I love it. And so I hope we'll continue this for as long as we can. But I also want to make some progress as far as reading is concerned. So I'll get myself a stronger pair of spectacles. I'll get myself a brighter lamp bulb at my bedside, and hopefully make some headway into these and other piles. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for sticking around for this. This was a great little live stream. I hope to be back with recorded, edited videos sometime soon, but I have some travel plans and other things coming up, but I do want to keep touching base. So a live stream, if not, a recorded video, is the way that I look at it. So thank you so much for being in the chat. If you're watching this later, I hope you enjoyed this live stream. I'd love to hear from you in the comments and give me your opinions on books that we read and books that we don't and buy. And I'll see you at the next video. Thank you. Good night.